Hi guys. In this video, I wanted to address a little bit of journalistic propaganda, um, especially when it comes to the issue of Brexit in the UK, which, as of today, which is the 4th of April, it's a complete debacle. It would take a full stream to get into the details of it, but I wanted to kind of comment on some of the economic misinformation that's being put out there. I used to think that Americans were kind of myopic when it came to global issues and their understanding of, you know, location and geography and all these other things, but it's nothing compared to these Ramonas and these Remain candidates who are so myopic they really don't understand that there is a global market out there, that things exist outside of Europe. In fact, they seem to fail to understand that there is, anything outside of Europe. And as a result of that, we get headlines like this. This is from The Independent, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a very pro-Remain sort of institution. And there's a whole video attached to this up at the top. I'll put links to this article and you could watch the video. And I listened to it in complete disbelief concerning what they're basically claiming. If we did a no deal, a WTO exit from the European Union, how food prices were going to jump up and suddenly, everything will become more expensive. But there's a fundamental flaw in that thinking, which I'm going to kind of point out with this whole thing. So it says here, food prices are set to rise sharply if the UK crashes out of the EU with no trade deal in a little over a month. So this is an older article, it's from February of 2019. But how much might shoppers be affected by this tariff, border checks, and the weaker currency? Now, I agree. The pound has fallen. As a result, imports have become more expensive, especially against the euro. So importing food from Europe, yes, it's going to be more expensive because the pound is weaker. That's economics. That has nothing to do with policy. But further than that, all of these things, right? So business groups and interests die warnings and so on and so on. They're concerned about border checks. But this was the point I wanted to make here. Half of the UK foods arrives through Dover and Folkestone during the spring. Britain, particularly depending on imports of fresh fruits and vegetables, because many are out of season in this country and must be imported from warmer climates. This is the trade route to Europe, right? And what this article fails to understand is that once we're out of the EU protective bloc, and that's what it is. It is a protectionist bloc to protect farmers, industries, and so forth from actually competing with global markets. We no longer have to buy our food from Europe. So if we are out on the outside of the trading bloc, yes, we're subject to possible tariffs if we don't get a free trade deal, which the rest of the world has to deal with anyway, right? The rest of the world trying to, import things or export things into Europe, they're inflicted with these tariffs. So this is admitting that it's a tariff block that's basically meant to exclude the rest of the world. But this of course is the issue, that we no longer have to buy our food from Europe and we are no longer subject to these tariffs. In fact, the very next article I have here, this is from, Farmland Ireland. It talks about Argentinian producers are regaining a foothold in the British market. Now, presently in the UK, we get most of our beef from Ireland. I believe we account for maybe 16% of Irish beef and meat products, lamb and so forth. So the UK buys most of their beef from Ireland. And okay, if we get out and we're suddenly subject to possibly as high as 10% on beef, we don't have to buy from Ireland anymore. In fact, the article actually goes on to say it, that Argentinian beef price is an obvious consideration, that Argentinian beef is so much cheaper. The live price for Argentinian heifers and steers is €1.60 per kilogram and €1.36 per kilogram for cow. So this is the price being sold for Argentinian beef. This compared to an average Irish price for steers and heifers of €2.20 to €2.25 per kilogram, with up to $1.60 being paid for cows. So in other words, it's cheaper to buy beef from Argentina, and especially if the EU is going to inflict us with tariffs, we don't even need to have beef coming in from these places, from Europe anymore. We don't need to have our fruits coming in from these places anymore. And this is what these Remainers and so forth who are complaining about, oh, food is going to be more expensive, goods are going to be more expensive, and all these other things. Their myopic thinking says that the only place we can get food from is Europe. And this is complete nonsense. This is of course, the sleight of hand that they're playing with this fear-mongering. And as I've shown you just now, the price of beef, even after you import it, and we're probably going to have a free trade agreement with Argentina, it is still cheaper than buying it even within the bloc. Even though right now we're not paying any tariffs on Irish beef, if we could get rid of the tariffs for the Argentinian beef with the World Trade Organization deal, why are we going to spend more money, almost €1 more per kilogram on beef and steer and all these other things when we can get it cheaper elsewhere? So this is the double speak, and this is the propaganda speak that's taking place regarding, the fearmongering and food and all these other kinds of things. I do believe we'll get a free trade deal with Europe, simply for the fact that we are one of their biggest export markets. Germany, I mean, you just need to look outside in the UK and you'll see how many Volkswagens, BMWs, Mercedes-Benz, etc. If they decide to punish us with tariffs, we will respond in kind and start putting tariffs on German imports into the UK. And Germany is already in recession at this point. It's not gonna fare well for them. So if that goes on, we will just respond in kind, and Germany is basically going to have a huge economic crisis amongst all the other economic crises that are taking place. So this is just pure propaganda. These people don't understand any of the things. I've even seen Reuters articles talking about, missed economic activity because of Brexit and all these other kinds of things. And again, that's complete garbage. There's no way to tell what would have been, like how people would have spent their money. I mean, you could pull figures out of thin air. But of course, because of the uncertainty in the politics, it's not uncommon for people to hold back their money, their spending, just to kind of figure things out, especially since we are in the 11th hour, or we're actually past it, because the data is actually past us. So it's not unusual for this quarter to be slightly down. I've seen the scare tactics talking about, because of Brexit, computer technology is going to be 20% more expensive. And it has nothing to do with Brexit. It has everything to do with the devaluation of the pound. And again, that's not policy, that's markets. And what these people, again, fail to understand about this entire thing, what has been the result of a cheaper pound? The amount of foreign investment coming into the UK has been at record levels. And you need to understand that these people are investing now. The pound is cheaper. They're investing now, and they're not thinking a couple months or a couple years. These people are thinking long term. They're renting spaces and all these other types of things. Now, I'm not saying there's not going to be upset in terms of the whole divorce process. I'm not saying that some institutions are not going to move out. People are pointing to the automotive industry in the UK. But again, not understanding the economics of these things, Japan just got a free trade agreement with the EU. And okay, so we've had, I think, Nissan and a couple other people talk about closing the plants in the UK. And everybody's saying, that's because of Brexit. No, of course not. If that was the case, they would have moved the plants from England and moved it to Europe. But they didn't. They closed it because now they could just export it from Japan, because now Japan has a free trade agreement with the EU. So they could actually close the unnecessary plants that they built to try and get it, inside the trade bloc. And that's what's going on. So we would have lost these plants anyway. Right, the minute Japan got their free trade agreement, all of these plants were closing regardless. So, but this, again, look out for this type of propaganda. Look out for this type of noise. Again, these people, especially coming as we're literally past the deadline at this point, you're going to see a lot more of this kind of screaming and shouting and turning blue and holding my breath until I get my way sort of thing. So look out for these types of articles. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that information was good for you. I will put links to these articles below. If I could find the others, I'll add those too. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. And take care, guys.